I saw a couple tweets that you had on the news that came out of Ohio State yesterday that Urban Meyer is getting a 3-game suspension. Gene Smith is getting a 2-week suspension. And other than the report for all of us to digest, the page will be turned there in Columbus. What are your thoughts?
Last night it was difficult last night. I don't. For somebody who, let's put it this way, I have a unique perspective on it. The fact that I was a college coach and I messed up, and I found a way to deal with the consequences and be better. But I've been asked the question lately, like if somebody offered me a coaching job again, would I take it? And my answer is I don't know if I deserve it, right? I don't know if a parent could trust me with their child because of my past mistakes. And those are consequences to that. Coaching in college is not a right, it's a privilege. And I'm not really the investigation and everything that comes out with it, I'm not necessarily too involved with that, but what the program stood for, what they said it stood for, was a marketing campaign, essentially. It wasn't what he believed, because he stepped up on Big Ten Media Day, simply told the world a lie, and hey, coaches lie to the media all the time. It was what it was about that he lied about. That's the problem for me. And essentially, he told all those kids he coaches that it's okay to lie because you'll just get a slap on the wrist. And essentially, he victim shamed. And for me, those two things don't compute. Now, what I hoped would have happened is that, and I made this clear to Ohio State fans, you're gonna be okay if Urban Meyer's not your head coach. It just proved to everybody that they had the opportunity to be better during this whole process, and they weren't. And that's the troubling part of it. To your point, they flipped the page. I think Urban Meyer's answer to all these questions that come up in the next few weeks are just simply, the school made their decision. I sat out 3 weeks.
Oh, yeah, that's what's going to be, right? Yeah. I mean, there's unless he decides to unless he does decide that there is some sort of PR work on his part that needs to be done for himself, whether somebody sits him down and explains to him this is what's happening, that if he does not want to coach much longer for whatever reason, does want a job in the media afterwards and needs to reburnish his credentials on that front, that he sits down and has a one-on-one with some potentially friendly face. That other than that, the question, anybody asks him a question, it'll be like, that's already done. I served my time, asked and answered, next question.
Yeah. And the hardest thing to kind of take in from all this, and it just proves to the point of why, like, a jury of your peers doesn't mean people who benefit from you staying in place, right? The people that adjudicated this process were individuals that benefited with Urban Meyer staying on in his job. That's not an unbiased investigation. I mean, you read the investigation stuff.
I did. I read it cover to cover.
This was not presented to the media either before the press conference. Do you think the media would have had some sort of question here and there on what was presented in that investigation? That was left till after he made the statement. This was a big thing. So when I yelled at the reporter, that was kind of what went viral 20 years ago. I stood up the next day and gave an apology, or what was a written apology. And when I watched the press conference last night, it was like I use this analogy a lot when I see people behaving in the same form that I have in my life. I say, like, oh, it looked like I was looking in a mirror. Because if you watch, there's just so much unemotion in when I'm giving this statement, and I just kind of discard the paper into my locker. I just thought to myself in that moment, I'm like, that's me at 21 years old, simply not taking any accountability for what I just did the day before. And it opens your eyes to these things when it happens. It makes you truly confront what you have been like, and then go, why can't he see that either? Wasn't he not prepared for this process that was about to happen last night?
These are all good questions. I don't, I've spent the last month trying to be somebody who can get inside Urban Meyer's head and what he's thinking and how he goes about his business, and whether he feels that he should be accountable to anybody other than the fan base that he says that he's let down. I honestly don't know how to answer all that. But one thing I do want to touch upon a little bit more of what you've just said over the last few minutes, Ryan Leaf here on the Rich Eisen Show, is putting yourself in the shoes of Zach Smith, So you've been there, is what you're saying.
Well, I think that anytime somebody acts out behaviorally, I think that you develop some sort of empathy. And when I talk to these college kids, I talk to them about the difference between empathy and sympathy, right? Sympathy is you feel sorry for somebody. Empathy is you actually put yourself in their shoes and experience what they're feeling.
Right.
And yesterday when Urban Meyer was giving that speech or reading that statement, I was like, I could put myself in his shoes and know exactly where he was at that moment. And you have to take that all in and then not necessarily pass judgment on it, but understand that you know what he's going through and he just isn't aware. There's no self-awareness around it.
Right. But in terms of Zach Smith, some of the behavior that's described here for outside of what was going on with his wife is completely out of control. And
the fact that he had a job, how does that happen? I mean, how does he continue to have a job in that position? That's hearing what the investigation brought to form makes me even wonder more why continuously it happened over and over and over again. That's a big reason why everybody's still wondering why Urban Meyer didn't do anything before.
Well, I'm assuming the coach who you were coaching for, you weren't the grandson of his mentor.
I was removed from my job immediately as soon as the head coach found out. I was asked to resign.
Well, and they're saying that Urban didn't know about the photographs in the White House, didn't know what was going on with his secretary, didn't know. But Brett McMurphy, who's reporting, has been at the forefront of all this, said that definitely staff at the Ohio State knew that.
That is a cop-out. It is.
Did other members of the staff of which football program was it?
West Texas A&M.
Okay.
In college, and yeah, I mean the it wasn't a joke. The constant was that if you got injured, Coach Leaf would come see you, essentially, and take advantage of them by asking them for their pain pills, or ultimately at the end, just taking them from the player. So it was known. The head coach clearly didn't know until it was presented to him, and immediately I was asked to resign. So I have the understanding. Let's look at it this way. Consequences are deserving of what behavior is exhibited. I go to the Ray Rice incident, right? It's a privilege to play pro football. I know that, and it's not a right. And there were consequences to his actions. Now, what he did with that and what he's doing now with it, he's out there raising awareness. He's trying to be a better man. He's speaking about it. That was the change. And I talked about this when this first initially happened with Urban Meyer. I said that he is going to either become a better person when he loses his job, because I thought he was going to lose his job from when this first came out. And I said, he can take this, have an understanding, and be better about it and become a better man because he didn't act accordingly like he was supposed to. And all I feel like Ohio State did in this moment is just enable his behavior. I surrounded myself with people like that my whole life, right? That just told me I was the victim, that it wasn't my fault. But the people who really care about me and who really unconditionally love me, showed me that mirror, showed me when I was behaving that way. And that was the only way I could make a change in myself. Otherwise, I was just going to continue to act out and behave the same way my whole life.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.